Welcome to AHA video number 6. And I'm in a different environment. As you can see, this is my work office. I don't know that I really had an AHA moment this week from anything we've read. Michael Ossett's last chapter with the 10 Commandments on parenting really didn't speak to me about much. A, again, I'm not a parent. B, there's a lot of it that is inapplicable to someone who deals with young adults, for whom a great deal of what he's saying parents need to do are things supposed to be encouraging them to find out for themselves. So that's one of the problems that I found with the last chapter. It just didn't work for me. I did like the Koenigsberg article a little bit more. I found it fascinating that she was arguing and noted that it's the parents who brought the technology into the home. And that's probably where I'll end up talking a lot. I also loved the David Pogue article, but I'm a huge David Pogue fan. He's just great fun to read and great fun to watch on his various television things. His involvement with Nova is one of the more interesting technology links with modern mass communication I find interesting. And Pogue has such a sense of humor, I don't know how to take some of his work, if he's serious or not. And that's one of the things I mentioned about in the discussion forum. But going back to Koenigsberg, in a weird coincidence, the article she references by Vicky Rideout, I had happened to find the week before. It's actually called Parenting in the Age of Digital Technology, a National Survey. It was done through the University of Northwestern, and conductors of the research include some fairly well-known scholars who deal with this, and I'm scrolling to the bottom of it on my work computer to get their names. One of them is Ellen Wartella. One is Vicky Rideout, and I forgot the name of the third one. I should remember. Oh, it's Alexis Laricella and Sabrina Connell. The study itself looks fascinating. They studied 2,300 people, and the last half of it is the actual questions. It's an actual report on the research. And a great deal, and I'm sorry for doing the stretch over, a great deal of it's really fascinating because it's 2012 to 2014, and it's revised in there a couple of times actually. A great deal about it is early use of technology, and by early I mean the age of the child exposed. The children that it's studying and the parents are 0 to 8. So from newborn to 8 years old, which is a little bit younger than most of the kids we saw in Ossett's book. And it reminds us of how much this is learned behavior. In their introduction, they said they were looking at what does the family media and technology environment look like today, which is something that's rapidly changing. As we can see, Ossett's 2008 household is not really anything like the one in 2014, which is almost not like the one in 2017. That's just how fast technology keeps changing, and the rules keep changing, and the roles keep changing. They also looked at how quickly and how widely have parents adapted to mobile technology. And one of the things I was fascinated by was parents are the ones bringing a lot of this technology in, and Koenigsberg in her article had pointed out, that she is the one who brought the tablet, the smartphone, into the house. She brought her personal ones, her workplace ones, and we often forget as the adults, we're the ones who bring the technology to the children. They wouldn't want to be using it if they didn't see us using it. And I have to sit down sometimes and take an inventory of my own technology, and I have work technology, I have home technology, I have technology I use between both of them, and I don't even have kids. If I had children, the poor things would be technologically overwhelmed simply by the amount of stuff we have, because my husband is one of those people who sees a gadget and has to buy it. So we're not alone. We're not unusual people in that sense. So the kids have got to be the ones from 0 to 8 who are overwhelmed. And one of the things about this article was it showed that. It showed that it was, or this research and Koenigsberg's article, it showed how many parents had these things. And one of the things that was fascinating for it is that it showed of the households, and I'm looking at the chart from on my left. It's surveyed parents of children's ages 0 to 8, and of those, 69% had a smartphone. That's 2014. And 40% had a tablet, and 34% had both. That's a lot of technology entering the homes through parents. And as Pogue pointed out, and as some other studies have pointed out, a lot of times the technology kids get is the stuff we hand them. We hand them the tablet. We give them our old cell phones. We give them our old computers. Parents, adults. That's kind of what drives this, and I found that was kind of interesting. And this study certainly showed that it was the parents driving the technology in the home, not the children. At least not up until 8 years old. That seemed to run counter to what Ossett was telling us about how kids kept wanting more and more technology because technology made them want more. And it's like, that's learned behavior. That's behavior they're picking up from the adults in their lives. If you have been, from 0 to 8, exposed to adults using lots and lots of technology, as a teenager, you're going to want lots and lots of technology. So I had some problems when I looked back at Ossett and what he was saying about those things. Also, that means we're the ones creating the instant gratification because we're the ones giving the technology to the children in the first place. So maybe some of that kind of thought needs to be, well, revisited and rethought. The other thing that this research showed that was kind of interesting is, while most parents did not think that technology made parenting easier, it wasn't smartphones and tablets that were the primary source of media in this study. In this study, from what, as I interpret it and read it, the technology most parents are still relying on for their children is television. It wasn't video games. It wasn't a computer. It was television and TVs. It talks about a huge place where how children. I'll get back to that one. Where is it? There's part of this survey that talks about how much time was spent in front of each item. And the first one was the TV, and it said percent of the families with children 0 to 8 with each item in the home. 99% of the time was television. 72% was cable or satellite, which is again television. 72% was also a console video game player like an Xbox or a PS4 or a Nintendo Wii, whatever it is. Then it was a DVR. And it was interconnected TV. This was the percentage of people with TVs. So it seems to me this study looks at and shows television is still the technology with the hugest impact on families. And it said televisions are often left on in the background just for noise. So we don't even realize what we're doing with TV. And, Ossett does mention the problems with having a TV in the child's room. And that is something perhaps that needs to be revisited by parents when 42% of children 6 to 8 have TVs in their own room. That might be a little much. But it seems that the technology is really still with the TV. And it was the TV that people were putting their kids in front of. It was the television that was doing the babysitting. It wasn't the smartphone. This survey found that there were fewer David Pogues who were worried about their kids with iPads than there were probably people with kids addicted to television, which makes you wonder how big this fear of technology needs to be. The other thing this survey showed was that parents routinely spent way more time in front of the television than children. The survey did indeed break families down into media-centric, those that focused on and had lots of media, media-moderate, those who had some media, like a computer in the house, maybe a tablet and a smartphone, and media-light, those who didn't have much at all. Oddly enough, the media-light families were almost always middle class, upper middle class to high class, to upper class. That was an interesting point. I'm looking at the survey right now. Parent screen time for media-centric parents was 11 hours versus 4 hours for their children. And for media-moderate parents, it was 4 hours and 42 minutes as compared to 2 hours and 53 minutes. There wasn't, now the media-centric family, it was definitely the parents driving the children's desire to be involved with the media. But it was interesting that it's always, even in the media light situations, it was the parents who were online more than the children. And now, granted, it's 0 to 8, but that's when those habits are instilled. So it was kind of fascinating to see that it was such a screen time thing. But again, much of that screen time is television, not smartphones. Now, since 2014, when this study came out, we've become a much more portable television. I can't think of a better word for it. Much more handheld and portable device than TV society because of streaming media and because we've cut the cable cords and so forth. After all, you're watching me on basically a TV screen in some ways. So I don't know how representative these numbers are. But I did find the survey really interesting and the results very interesting. It also found out that when it came to parents, media stuff was just not necessarily on the radar. A full 77% didn't think negotiating time was a problem. And they went on to discuss the percentage who said they were concerned about things. And for parents of children 2 and under, the hugest concern was health and safety, followed by fitness and nutrition and sleep patterns, which makes sense. For parents 2 to 5, the concerns were health and safety, fitness, nutrition, behavior, social and emotional skills, literacy. For parents of 6 to 8-year-olds, it was health and safety, school performance, fitness, social emotional skills, followed by behavior. Media use was in the bottom half of things parents were worried about. Now, whether that's and it was all groups here, whether that's because it wasn't registering on the parents' radar how much the kid was using or not, it wasn't the problem. It wasn't the problem a lot of these parenting books from the early 2000s made technology out to be. And I mean, that's one of the things we've seen that switch. Now, it'll be interesting to see where parenting books designed for millennials who are parents go. A quick look at Amazon shows you that since 2008, there have been parenting books printed and published by the score. I mean, there are just tons of them about digital parenting in the digital age, as this study was called. There are just tons of them because, of course, self-help books are a huge market. But what I found fascinating about this study was they also, let me find it, talked about what sources people went to for their parenting advice and parenting tools. Oh, and I probably won't find it. But what was funny to me was it was still the first thing they went to were their own parents, followed by ministers, followed by pediatricians, followed by people. And the last two things on the list were books and the internet. So people are still connecting and still talking. Parenting is not gone virally networked, and people are still getting advice from parents, but that doesn't mean things haven't changed, and it doesn't mean things shouldn't change. I'm pretty sure if I had children, my mother's advice would have to be tempered by the reality of what the world is around us. And that's, I think, one of the things that gives me problems with Ossett's book and with other books, is the world changes so fast. By the time a book about parenting and technology is printed, the technology that it's talking about is out of date. Part of that's because publishing just takes so long. Part of it's technology just moves that fast. So it's interesting. What was fascinating also about this study is what parents use to keep their children occupied. Especially thinking of the David Pogue article that we read. Pogue was saying, I give my kid the iPad. Well, when we look at this and the results of the Wartella and Rideout study, parents for 0 to 8-year-olds were most likely to give their kid a toy. It was a full 88%. That was the first thing. And they separate tablets from toys. 79% would give them a book. 77% would stick them in front of the TV. 47% gave them a handheld video game. A full 37% then gave them a mobile device. And 35% gave them a computer to keep them distracted or keep them busy around the house. So, again, I don't necessarily see the problems. Or maybe I'm just looking at it in a different light, or I'm looking at it as a learned behavior, and that the children that Ossett's talking about, I don't know that I see them as the majority. I mean, since most of his evidence is anecdotal from this patient's in his own practice, I don't know that it's suspect. I wouldn't say that, but I don't know that it's enough to drive any kind of sociological or psychological conclusions from. And I think that's where I've been very resistant to Ossett. I'm not seeing enough of what lies behind what he's talking about. Yes, he's a psychologist. Yes, he's a trained psychologist. That doesn't mean things haven't changed since he was trained. And that's, I think, my disconnect with it. And I'm very honest that I'm very disconnected from that book. The study also went on to say that in a restaurant, parents were 64% more likely to have a toy or an activity, 48% of the time a book, and in a restaurant, the mobile device obviously moved up above a television show or a computer because it is a mobile device. At bedtime, the study showed that books were the most likely thing to be used by parents getting kids ready for bed. Mobile devices were 8% of the time. Handheld video games, 5%. Computers, 4%. So I think what this particular study shows is maybe some of the worries are overblown. Maybe some of the problems are parent down, not child up. Maybe we just need to know more. We have only had this technology really in the span of human life for a very short bleep. And we can't expect to know what it is and how all the consequences are going to be. They're going to change as the technology changes. So any kind of advice, any kind of book, any kind of study, any kind of research is very volatile. And it's very easy to go out of date, and it's very easy to be suspect. And it's very easy to find stuff that contradicts. One of the things about technology and its consequences is there's always contradictions. It's full of them. And that's the way it works. So my aha moment for this week was simply that there's a lot out there that might contradict some of what we've been researching and what we've been looking at, and we have to take that into consideration as much as anything else. Have a good week. Bye.